Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of my reality recap. We have now reached the last episode of Summer House. It is reunion part 2, and Cocaine Carl got an apology. Okay, we have a lot to talk about here, and I have some I don't know if I want to call them new thoughts, because I had some of these thoughts at the beginning of the season, but obviously my recap started later on, and so I never got to actually voice them. And I'm going to shift a few gears here just a little bit in some areas, but we need to jump into this. Before I do, though, I just want to remind you guys that I have my 28 Days to the Life That You Love challenge that is starting next week on Thursday, June 20th. I'm excited for all of you who've already signed up. If you're interested in joining me, the price does go up June 15th, which is tomorrow on Saturday. So if you'd like to get in on the early bird ticket price, I highly suggest you do. And I'm just super excited about it. There's so much that I can't wait to share with you guys in how to help you not just get into a higher timeline, but get through the fluctuation period that always happens every time you enter a new reality, a new version of yourself, and also like how to stay there and how to build upon it. We're going through some major timeline fluctuations right now. And there's a lot of unsettled energy in the collective, a lot of fear, it feels like there's old patterns that are coming up right now. And so to help you navigate it with the summer solstice energies, the full moon Capricorn energies, like they're just super ripe to support you in this journey. It's one of the reasons why I was called to do it, why I got the download from Spirit to do it. And if you're interested, I'd love to have you in there. Okay. So I'm leaving the link in the description, in the show notes, or in the description below the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. Okay. So, Summer House reunion part 2. We left off last week with the whole Weston Sierra incident unfolding. And we return with Andy asking West if there's anything he regrets about what happened between him and Sierra. And he mentions that, he doesn't have any regrets, even though he feels like Sierra may have regrets about their relationship and the time they spent together. He does not. And he does apologize for hurting her. And he feels that, he may have expressed his feelings a little too late. So I'm not sure exactly what he means here. And this is one of my issues with West. And oh man, West, he has not done himself any favors by going on Nick Vial's podcast. I'll talk about that in just a second. I just want to fully say I still like West. I think he's great for the show. He's a great addition to the show. I wouldn't set any of my girlfriends up with him. That's for certain. I wouldn't suggest anyone date him right now, as if you're a woman. but he can totally he's a good time to hang around. Some guys are just good times. He's a funny dude, but God, is he horrible with his words? Like really horrible with his words. I can't even like get out a full sentence. Like it's just so jarring and jolted and cut up, and you just he doesn't you can tell that he's not really sure what to say, which, to be honest, if you're that scared about the public's opinion of you, which, let's be honest, most people when they're entering this space would be concerned. It does take a little bit of thick skin to enter into any kind of platform, especially a reality TV platform. But you can just tell that he is trying to choose his words so carefully. And it's just, never mind him fumbling the bag with Sierra, he's just fumbling over his words right now. So, you know, he expresses that, maybe it was too late and that he's hurt over this as well. Well, Andy asks if anyone, Andy asks Sierra how she feels about it. And she actually, she's like, it's fine. It's fine. She's, which all women and men should know that whenever a woman says it's fine, it's not fine. It's not fine. But Kyle, says that, if they got back together, I'd totally ship them. And so, Andy asks Sierra, is there a world in where anything could come back? And she's like, there would have to be a world of change in order for there to even be a contemplation over it, basically. And this took everyone by surprise, including myself, aside from me actually seeing the previews last week. But I was shocked that she was still feeling this way. And this pains me a little bit for Sierra, because what a this is coming from a woman who is simply stunningly gorgeous. She's smart, she's sweet, she's got good values, but she clearly has low self-esteem about herself when it comes to what she deserves in a relationship. And I can totally relate. I've been there. I've been there, and not too far long ago, so I get it. It's crazy, like some of the things that stick with you for long periods of time. And so everyone is shocked. Jesse's like, so you're saying there's still a chance? And West was even surprised at that answer. He wasn't expecting her to feel that way. And she gets really emotional at this point. Tears start to surface again. And my heart goes out to her, because I know the internet's kind of, a lot of people are supporting her, but there's also a lot of people who are just like, how did you not see it? How did you not know? And even on Nick Viall's podcast, which I should go into now before we move on to the next thing, he, I listen to his show, and I will say that oftentimes I feel like he gives really good relationship advice. I find his relationship, you can tell he was kind of born for this stuff. Like he's doing what is part of his life path. At least that's how I see it and how it feels to me. But, just like I get it wrong, he can get it wrong. And I just feel like sometimes his opinions are really based on very little information. And he seems to sometimes give opinions on things that he leans into certain pieces of information without actually bringing up the other stuff that needs to be shared as well. And it makes me wonder how much he's paying attention sometimes to when he's like voicing his opinion. Now, his opinion was of one that, she had boundaries and she just didn't enforce them. She made a boundary, but then she had a problem holding that boundary. He's not wrong there completely. What I don't like is that, we find out in this last week's episode that Sierra says, like, they spent every day together pretty much after cameras went down. He brought her to his parents. He brought her to a wedding. He brought her to his brothers in Chicago, all the stuff. I'm sorry, but if you're spending almost every day with someone, you're definitely going into relationship territory. And the semantics of putting a label on it and all of that, it's like at some point we have to learn to be responsible for our actions and our words. And if they're not lining up, like that is like one of my biggest pet peeves. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It tends to be more men, and at least in my experience in my life, um, of of people who just say one thing but do a complete opposite. It's like your word is your bond. And I will say this, and I've said it before, as a man, your word is your bond. And when you're in your masculine energy, the masculine energy, and again, this is also for women. I should say this is also for women, because we all have a masculine, we all have a feminine energy. When you are in your healthy masculine energy, you abide by what you say. Your words mean something. They hold a power and a truth. And you don't just use your words flippantly or carelessly. Like, you won't say something you don't mean. And not just mean in that moment, like truly mean. And when you're not in your healthy masculine energy, again, this goes for both women and men, your words are used carelessly. They're not used in a way that is honorable. And that is a definite thing, like I find in our society, that we're not holding strong to our word. And to me, like, your word is so important. I would never say to someone like, yeah, I'll do this, this, and that, and then not do it. Like, I don't know. It's just the way I was raised, the way I grew up. But like, it's also the Taurus in me. Like, I'm loyal to a fault. Like, I'm steadfast. If I say I'm going to do it for you, I'm doing it for you. And if it means I'm going to break my back, I will break my back. And I'm not saying that everyone should break their back, but like, that's just, again, sometimes I'm loyal to a fault and it hurts me. So I just, I really was one. Okay, for that particular podcast, I don't know if any of you listened to it, but I listened to it and I felt like, one, why did I just have to spend so long to get to maybe 20 minutes of an interview that actually was what I was waiting for, that actually wasn't even that great? I had kept hitting the fast forward button on that podcast, like, get me to the part that I want to hear, because this is just bullshit. Like, this whole, like, whatever conversations they're having. And I get that there's a part, like, as an interviewer, if you have a guest who's coming in on a hot seat, yeah, you want to build up rapport with them. You want to get them feeling comfortable. I mean, it may come across as manipulative. For me, it's just something I naturally do with my guests. I love to be casual. I love it to just think, so that when we do go into some tough topics, I can get more information out of them. And it's not because that's my plan going in. It's a natural thing of like what I do, but that's all also what an interviewer would do if they're smart, if they're really trying to get someone to give information that they maybe wouldn't normally give if they were already in the hot seat from the jump. So this is something that felt like they spent way too much time on. And I'm like, God. But what I noticed with West is that dude needs some communication lessons. He's real, like, let's be fair to West. He's 29. Okay. He's still a young guy. I think about myself when I was 29. I also had issues speaking very clearly about my feelings. That was a major pain point for me, just because my voice had been shut down so much through childhood. I had been silent. I'd been told to be silent from a sexual trauma. Like, there were a lot of things there that made it very difficult for me to actually talk about my feelings. I don't know what's happened to Wes in his childhood, whether there was something, not much, who knows. But there's this guy. He's clearly, this is what I think part of the problem is. You can tell, and this is what Paige brought up in the last episode, that he is struggling to really be liked by the masses. He wants to be famous. He wants to be in the spotlight. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, some people, like, that's their desire and that's what they want. Cool. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Where I think when it becomes wrong is when you're compromising, who you are, when you're not comfortable being just who you are. And he's kind of giving inauthentic vibes on the stage. Like, I don't feel like we got the real true West up there. And when I heard him on this show, on this podcast, I'm like, this is like a completely different person than who I saw in Summer House. I felt like I'm like, two different people. So I'm like, did we get the real West on Summer House or is this the real West? And they're like, maybe they're both part of him, but he hid this part. Like, I don't know. But it just, what a fumbling, he sounded like a fumbling, bumbling idiot, to be quite honest. I don't know what Sierra saw in him if this is the way he speaks. Like, I would have gone nuts. I would have been pulling my hair out of my head if I was having a conversation with this guy. Like there's I don't know what it was. But when they break from this and they're like trying to fix mics and everything, Sierra's trying to get her mic fixed. It pans over to Wes, and you can tell like he looks at Andy, he goes, "Look at this." And he lifts his arms up and he's got massive pit stains underneath his arms. The guy's been sweating, like he is nervous and totally understandably so. But then it pans over to Paige and Sierra and Paige says to her, like he's more scared, but what the public thinks about him, he doesn't give a shit about you. That's a good girlfriend telling you exactly how it is. And Sierra's response is like, whatever, like I feel bad because you can tell Sierra would still be open to getting back with him. Like I don't think it would take much on West's side to do it. And I think she would kind of consider it, which makes me a little sad for Sierra. Uh, yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what this summer is going to bring for them. But then we shift gears and we go over to Kyle and Amanda. So Andy starts talking about their relationship, which of course went through a lot of ups and downs over the summer. We saw a really crappy side of Kyle, which we've seen before in the past. And it's just, I think for them this year, the big issues were Amanda wants to live in the suburbs. She wants to get out of the city. She wants a backyard. She wants to think about having a family. And Kyle's like not ready to leave the city. And then we also saw over the summer the girl friends, Sierra and Paige, talking to Amanda about like, well, what do you want? Like what or your dreams? Because we see you like you could be so successful doing this or that. And Amanda had to bring up on that we see on one of the boat trips last over the summer of her bringing it up to Kyle and Kyle like completely making it all about him again. And it's like anything she wants to bring up about herself and what she wants gets shut down immediately. So Kyle is asked about, what is it about living in the suburbs? Like, were you not planning on that? And he's like, no, from his mind, he's like, yeah, we were always planning on it, but not until like, I thought until the kids were able to like ride a bicycle outside or something like that. And Amanda's like, I don't remember that part of the conversation. So in his mind, he's like, we'll move to the suburbs when the kids are ready to play out on the street. And so we kind of go to Amanda and how lonely she actually felt in the marriage as well, because we see a couple different scenes where Kyle's like telling Amanda, it's lonely, social as I am, I'm lonely with you. And she actually opens up here. She gets really vulnerable, and I really appreciated this from her. She opens up about how she has been slipping into depression and post wedding. Right after they got married, she had, I guess, started to slip into a depression and it had like kind of post wedding blues, is what they called it. I don't know. I guess that can happen. But I think, for her, when Andy asked her, what was the root of it, she's like, well, it runs in my family. I think I'm a big, huge proponent of epigenetics. It can run in your family, but the only reason it's going to get expressed is because you're holding some sort of belief or frequency or you're enacting some kind of expression that turns that gene expression on. And I think that she's been suppressing what it is that she wants and she's not getting what she wants. And I think she's going to need to really kind of that they're gonna have to really open that door for her to explore her desires, her dreams, to feel like she's a partner in her marriage and that she's got her husband there. But she, claims she still loves Kyle so much. And I do believe that those two really do love each other. I can't say they've got the greatest dynamic in relationship, but they're certainly cute together. I think they are really cute together. But there's a lot of Kyle's very immature. There's certain things I really do appreciate about him, and I think he gets dogpiled on a lot. But he also is just not emotionally as intelligent as his 9 year younger wife. So she said that she, in Kyle's defense, when that when she was on her road to depression and he said he felt lonely, she felt lonely too. And she was in a really lonely place. But, when it comes down to it, whenever she's sad, whenever she's happy, Kyle's the first person that she wants to be with. Whatever it is, like that's who she wants to be with. And so, they talk about this, and Kyle does talk about how he reacted poorly, but to her like wanting something for herself. But in his mind, which I can understand, is he was like, I see her going through this depression. I see her like not talking, like isolating herself. And I'm thinking, what is adding one more thing to her plate gonna, is this gonna, how does this even factor in? And I think that's a valid concern. But I think the communication lines obviously needed to be open in a different way. I just don't think whenever there's alcohol involved with him that any solid communication should be participated in. Like if you're gonna have a big conversation about what you want, maybe on a boat when you're all been drinking in the sun all day, not the greatest thing to do. We also find out Kyle's DJing. Yeah, so he's DJing. But Amanda would love to have her own brand and make something that is an extension of her, not just, be part of an extension that's of Kyle. And I think that's great. I hope she does get that. I think it's really important for everyone to have something that's on their own. I think a lot of marriages fail because one of the partners is not really doing something for themselves. So whether it's the father who stays home or the mother who stays home, or if you are in a working relationship where, like, for instance, in this particular instance, Kyle is the owner, it's his company, and he brought Amanda in, like she's doing it to help him and to help their future, but it's not really her passion. I just think it's important no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home parent or you're a working parent. You've got to have a passion for yourself that you do and that lights you up. And it's important that your partner supports you in that. I think you just cannot go just thinking, oh, I'm just going to be a husband and wife and or a mother or a father, and that's all there is to it. Like you've got to have more than that. You've got to, and especially if you're a parent, you've got to show your kids like that it's important to have things that like light you up. It's important to partake in things where you feel purposeful. Like it is feeling purposeful is so important. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why Amanda is gone into depression and she's on antidepressants, which is, if that works for her, that's great. I'm never going to shame anyone for going on medication. It's not something I would necessarily choose or suggest to anyone that I love or care about, just because I think there's so many other options. But the at the end of the day, feeling purposeful is such a huge part of our ability to be happy. Like when we are having a purpose in life, we feel like there's direction. We feel like we're adding something to the world. And a lot of times when we hear about people retiring or like, when they're older in age, even if they were super healthy, we hear of like sudden deaths and things like that. And it's just when your purposefulness is your life force in a lot of ways. So I think that was really important. Jesse then, of course, stands up and validates their relationship, and he says, for all your faults and all the craziness that you two go through, he goes, it is clear to see that you guys love each other. So I think that was cute of Jesse to say. But then, of course, we move on to Jesse, which Andy calls him a soul of Sinatra with his singing. And what I thought was really cute here, and I think it's important to point out, is throughout the summer, Paige had made a comment about him touching her leg and how that's not appropriate and he shouldn't be doing that because she's a taken woman and Craig wouldn't appreciate it. And I didn't think that was such a big deal, but again, I'm a little more progressive when it comes to this stuff. I love having like male and female friends. Like I'm a very friendly social person. And I don't think a touch on the leg or anything like that, like it when I saw it on the show, I thought it was completely harmless. I thought it was being blown out of proportion. And so I really liked that Jesse was able to call Paige out because throughout the taping, she had put her hand on his leg four, five, six times and then did it again. And everyone saw her do it again. And so he called her out on that. And I thought that was really cute. He shared about his cancer journey and how, for him, it was really important to share that because you just never know who you're going to help. And I think this is really important, in a world where we previously lived in a world where we were meant to hide a lot of our traumas and our feelings and the pain that we're going through, our emotions that we're going through. We're finally moving more into, I think, a society that is more willing to hear and be open to that. I think we've also maybe gone a little too far to one side where trauma dumping has become more of a thing. But in Jesse's case, I don't think he was trauma dumping at all. I think what I'm trying to say here is that I think it's extremely important that people become more open about their hardships and the things that they're facing, and that especially when it comes to anything that is a body illness, having support, especially when it's a reproductive organ. This goes for both men and women. Allowing yourself to be supported by others is so important because we're talking about like the root and sacral chakra. So the lower two chakras. And oftentimes we get issues down in that area when we're not allowing our feelings, one, to be expressed and shared and honored, but also when we're not allowing ourselves to be supported by others. It's really important to allow for that. So if any of you are kind of going through that, I mean, just in general, I think it's important, but specifically too, whenever you've got anything going on with any of the organs or any kind of body issues in the first or second chakra, it's really important. So, okay, so he realizes it's okay to express your feelings, which is great. So then we move on to Lindsay and Carl. Okay, so this is where we're going to finish off, which was the biggest hot topic of the season, and I was completely fascinated by this entire dynamic. Again, just because I've lived through something similar to, like, there's similar uh, things that are coming up in their dynamic that I've experienced. Now, before we even get to him talking, they show a scene that they never actually showed afterwards. I don't know if it was shown in an extended version of Peacock, 'cause I don't watch it on Peacock, but um they showed how they were fighting about locking each other in like bathrooms and bedrooms, and then Andy's like, and you two you guys were supposed to get married to one another. So let me just say, I'll share with you guys, this is something I literally went through with my ex, who was an alcoholic who I lived with. And there were many times I had to try and lock myself in the guest bedroom. There were times where I would go into a bathroom to sleep to get away from him. He never laid a hand on me, but he certainly punched walls. He broke doors down that I had put like dressers in front of to stay in my room. It was a very, very traumatizing time period it was probably one of the most traumatizing things that have happened to me as an adult. And even to this day, in this moment, as I say this, I think it has affected me on a deeper level, and I'm even admitting to myself. So when they're talking about like locking each other in bathrooms, this is like actually a conversation I had with myself. And I'm like, am I gonna want to live with this? Do I want to get married to this person? Do I actually want to have kids with someone who can act this way in front of kids? Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? And again, I'm very open and honest about that particular time in my life. It was during a time where I had taken a leap of faith. I had quit my job. I tried to start my own company, going out on my own, building up my own clientele on the island. And so I was very financially strapped. And for the most part, I could always pay my half of the bills, but every now and then I needed a little extra support from him, at least in the beginning of that time period. And that is what kept me, I think, in that relationship longer than I wanted to be in it. It was because financially I didn't know if I could stand on my own 2 feet just yet. And so it was really that is something I had to work really hard to, like, okay, I got to get into that right position so that when it finally did 6 months later, when I finally pulled the plug after what should have been, I should have pulled the plug many, many, many months earlier. But locking yourself in a bathroom or a bedroom, the reason why I didn't, it's like I think about the way those two fought. They both of them were so manipulative, like extremely manipulative. I think they both have um tendencies that show up in most alcoholics. And I am saying the same for Lindsay. I'm not saying she's an alcoholic, but I see tendencies in how she handled herself um when she was, especially when she was drinking, but even still when she's sober, I see it. Both of these two like need serious work on themselves. um there is You lock yourself in a room or a bathroom when you don't feel like you're safe, when you don't feel like you can just get an opportunity to get some peace of mind, peace and quiet. One of the things that happened to me was my ex would love to just argue and yell and like I I never wanted to because it obviously would go nowhere and he never remembered any of it the next day. Didn't remember any of his behavior, anything that he said. It was like it never happened to him. And so, in Carl's defense, at the beginning of the season, when we saw what Lindsay was doing and calling him out as cocaine Carl, which I thought was absolutely deplorable, just that I think trumped everything else in the season. But I was really disappointed that Carl never leaned into that as part of for any of his reasons of why they shouldn't get married. Like, I don't know how that wasn't like at the top of his list. But to this point, it's extremely difficult to come to some sort of reasonable solution and move forward when one person doesn't even remember their behaviors or the words that they said from the night before. And so, yeah, is it at risk of happening all over again? Absolutely. It absolutely is. And I actually remember watching the beginning episodes of Summer House and looking at Carl and going, he is scared of her. And I know that fear because I was scared not of my boyfriend, but of what would happen once he was drunk. And so I think he was Lindsay, like we even saw it towards the end here. Like she's a tough fighter. And I would never date her. Again, I would never set any of my guy friends up to date her. Just as much as I don't think I'd set up any of my females to date Carl right now, at least where he's at. He definitely needs to do some work healing. But these two are just like if there was ever a toxic relationship template to look at, it would be these two. So yeah. So we open up the scene with them talking about Lindsay calling him Cocaine Carl. And Lindsay talks about how, it was their first night in the house. They had missed the first weekend. They get there. She's antsy about the girls and how they're going to be treating her. She's anxious. She doesn't know how she's going to be received. So she starts drinking. And, I guess when they're in the lift, this is when she claims that Carl was aggressive and dismissive with her when she was bringing it up. And he's like, you're going to be fine. Like, just relax. And I remember when I watched this, I was like, she's completely blown this out of proportion. I don't see how, like this could have escalated in a car with three other guys, okay, including Carl. And because I believe it was Carl, West, Kyle, and Jesse and her in together. And so I wish the guys like Kyle, or I wish I'm not Kyle, I wish Jesse or West may have like spoken up here and had shared something, but clearly they're like, we're newbies, we're not getting involved. We're gonna play Switzerland here. But it would have been nice to kind of hear from them like what their perspective was. Although my sense when that was all going down was like she's She's got all of this anxiety coming up. She doesn't know what to deal with. She's going to project it all and put it all on Carl because she can't put it on the girls. So she's going to put it all on her partner, which is many times what can happen. And so it got very misdirected to Carl. And then, of course, she leans into calling him Cocaine Carl, which I felt so bad for him when she did that. As much as, I went through what I did, I am so proud of my ex for taking his sober journey and changing and turning his life around and doing it rather quickly after we broke up. It was only a few months after we broke up. And I will say it was not because we broke up, it was because of something else, another partnership that he was involved in that threatened to dissolve if he didn't start making different life choices. And to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was me or someone else. All that matters is that he actually made that decision. And I think when people are going through this sober journey, they do need more support than usual. Does that mean it's other people's job to like tiptoe around them or baby them? No, it's just having a sense of common respect for their journey that they're on. And I was really disappointed that throughout the entire season, she never had admitted to this. She had never even admitted to this leading up to the reunion. It wasn't until this reunion that we actually got an apology from her to him, which I'll tell you was a really lame apology. It was a really, like, it was an apology, but it was followed by a but. It wasn't allowed to stand on its own and have its own weight until followed by something else. And so, Kyle does jump in and saying, "Listen, that's not true. You're making stuff up. You literally manifested this all in your head." And he said the reason why your fights actually spiral out of control is because they're based on delusion. I was like, "Whoa, that's a powerful thing to say." But I'll be fair. I think Kyle is very correct in this instance. I do think that Lindsay was basing stuff off of things that she was creating in her head. And this is something that anyone who's really, they're under a lot of anxiety, they're under a lot of fear of what might happen in the future of like with the girls, like it was you fuel that with alcohol, and then like yeah, like something like that's going to come up. So Andy asked Carl how he felt about being called Cocaine Carl on national TV. And I didn't know this, but he didn't even know about this until it aired. And I'm like, how did he not know that she called him that? So no one had brought it up to him. No one had said it to him. And so he admits that Lindsay has been supportive. So he starts off saying like, Lindsay has been very supportive of my journey, but this accusation like almost killed him. And he's been off cocaine for over 3 years, and he's never been called Cocaine Carl in his life, at least to his knowledge. And I, I think that this is, we hear it again later on, like Amanda says to Lindsay, like you weaponized his sobriety, and so true. Now, this is where Lindsay gives a very half-ass apology, but before you even like get into that, I want to say Carl needs to, you know, he's still doing his people pleasing. Even in this moment, he's still doing his people pleasing because he's making sure that Lindsay is recognized for her support. And again, I think he's doing a little bit of like a little West kind of thing where he's like really, because he can tell he's very worried about, what the public is going to think of him because, well, he's least justified because he's taken a lot of heat from the internet, like especially after the way Lindsay did her PR stunt before the season even aired. And so everyone was ganging up on him, which when that happened, I was also a little worried. But in this moment, he shouldn't even be saying that. He shouldn't even be acknowledging that she supported him. All he should be acknowledging is that how detrimental that was and how that made him feel. And I think he did not lean into it enough. He always diminished the importance of what that actually did to him by saying, I know you supported me. It's like, this isn't the time for that. You can have another conversation. We can talk about that in a different place, but this is not the time for that because she does not need to be babied in this area. Like she needs to take full ownership of this. And so she again gives her apology and she says, should I have questioned your sobriety? Like, absolutely not. And I completely apologize for questioning your sobriety. Now, do I think it was wrong to question your behavior? No, I think I had every right to question your behavior. And I'm like, oh, like this is the one thing I've always disliked about Lindsay. Like, and this is why I've never been a huge fan of hers on the season, is that she doesn't know how to just take accountability and hold it. Like she's always got to make sure someone else is knowing what their role is in all of it, you know? Like, and it's just it's such a bad quality to have that you can't just say an apology, especially one as big as this. Like, just say it, zip it, hold it. You know, you would be respected so much more if you did that. And so, this is, you know, she goes, she's like, I thought his behavior was aggressive and dismissive. And then Kyle like refutes this. And he's like, you know, like you just need to end the sentence with, I'm sorry. And I completely agree. And I think Kyle is totally justified in standing up here. And really, she gets really like upset. She's like, why are you being so nasty to me? Like, why are you being so nasty? And it's like, Lindsay, no, like, I'm sorry, but you don't get to have kid gloves played with you now. Like, I just, like, not on this instant. Now, do I feel like they went softer on Carl? You know, like I do. I feel like they went softer on Carl than they did on Lindsay. I think she took way more heat, but this is something that Bravo does with the men. Like they seem to just softball question the guys and, you know, don't really go in that hard on them. Like they get these passes. I don't know what it is. Like just like, okay. Um Bros will protect their bros. So anyways, you can tell though, while this is all going on, that the entire cast, maybe minus Gabby, is very supportive of Carl in this whole incident. Like you're looking at everyone's face and you're like, you can see some of the expressions that are being exchanged between one another, and you can tell they're all like, Lindsay is just like, wow. They're all feeling the exact same way. And so what happens is Ciara's like, you put the knife in the back and then turned it on Carl. And Amanda's like, yeah, you weaponized his sobriety. So they're coming to Carl's defense here, which is nice to see. And I think it's important because again, I just don't think that Lindsay is fully grasping the weight of what this carries. And so then Andy asked Carl, do you feel like her support ended or changed at some point? And he continues to give her support, like props for her support. And, you know, and this is where maybe it's like, you know, how he's like, oh, I wanted a high five. Maybe you could say good job. You know, it's like, there are times and places for it. There are times and places for getting the support from your partner, from getting a yeah, you go do it, babe. You know, like I got you. Like, you know, like there's time. This is like, no, like this is not the time. Like you've got to just let someone take their punches as they are deservingly need to take them. And, you know, he continues and says he knows he comes with a lot of baggage. I have a lot of shit I have to put on a table as soon as I meet someone. And this is where Paige jumps in and she's like, you know, you've been talking badly about yourself the entire time. Just because you're sober doesn't mean you get automatically put into the disregard pile. And I think this was a really sweet thing for Paige to say. I think it's important because you can tell, like, from watching this part of the reunion, how insecure Carl is about his own self-worth and his own value. And I don't think, like, I actually was talking to a guy a few months ago on a dating app, and he openly admitted that, because I saw that he doesn't drink, and he had asked me outright, he goes, do you drink a lot? And I was like, no, I just, you know, a couple of drinks, but like whenever I'm out social, I'm not really a big drinker at home. And I go, you? And he's like, well, I'm 8 months sober. And I was like, oh. And, you know, I told him like I had to end things right there. And then I'm like, we can't continue this any further. And he's like, I know. He goes, it's, you know, it's pretty shitty. I get it. And because he had already fallen off the wagon once. And I said, no, listen, I told him, do not devalue yourself. Do not do not think that because you're going through this, that that makes you any less of a person. It's just, I've been through an actual trauma of this with someone who's been an alcoholic in the past. Had I not been with that person, I might be open to dating you, but because I've been with it, I can't even touch you, like come close to this situation with like a 10-foot pole. Like I just can't. And that was me like putting up my boundaries and protecting myself and knowing like what was right for me, what was not. And I think like with Carl, I don't think he should be devaluing himself just because he's been, had addictions to drugs or alcohol in the past. And I, like it's a difficult journey. I go, but there's going to be people that will be supportive of that. He just needs to find the right partner. He needs to find someone who's maybe not so doesn't drink a lot or at all. Um, and clearly doesn't do any drugs. But I really felt sad in this moment watching this because I don't think that that's something to be ashamed of. I think it's a very admirable choice to choose you, to choose your life over the bottle, over a drug. And it does come with certain different choices down the road. And some people may be on board, some people may not. But it's not because you're any less of a person. I think you actually really are much more of a person because of that. And so we Lindsay says, Andy asked, is there anything you regret about like what you said? And she's like, I regret not using more delicate words. And I'm just like, what does that even mean? And I was literally thinking, like, what? And Amanda says the exact same thing, like, what does that even mean? Again, Lindsay, like she's so careful to like not admit too much to like her role in something. Man, I don't know about you guys, but do you not respect someone? Can you like not like someone? This is the reason why Lindsay takes so much heat on the internet too. Um, is because like you're not that liked. In a sense, like you make it hard to like you. I wouldn't say she's not liked. She is liked. But okay, so this is where I'm coming from. So if you I don't know if any of you guys watched Vanderpump Rules. But of course, last year we had the big Sandoval scandal thing where, Tom like cheated on Ariana with their best friend, Rachel. And Lala has had a huge like uproar about it of like, I don't understand. I've never met a woman who was cheated on and then was made God. And she was obviously cheated on and all of that. And she never got the same kind of response. And her situation is very different for a lot of reasons, and really dark for a lot of other reasons, which there's no need to really get into right now. But the point is that similar to Lala, okay, like they come off very harsh. They come off in your face, and that kind of energy doesn't gain you brownie points with people. It makes it a lot harder for people to be softer for you when you're vulnerable. It makes people like just not give a shit, because that kind of energy is just not attractive. It does, and I don't mean attractive like in a romantic way. I just mean attractive on a human level. And so when she's saying like, I regret not using more delicate words, and it's just like, oh, girl, like just cop to it. Cop to it. You will get actually more support this way. People will actually appreciate and like you more. So, anyways, Gabby, her mouthpiece jumps in to try to say, I think what she's trying to say. And it's like, no, Gabby, don't do that. Don't do that for her. Like it makes you look even worse. So then Andy pans to Danielle and is like, oh, do you think, considering you were their best friends, and do you think if you were more involved, do you think there's anything you could have done to help them through this? And she's like, oh, no, not at all. And everyone laughs. And that was a good humor breakup point. Her response, I think that was her best response all season. Like that was the best line she could have said. So I'll give Danielle props where props are deserved. Then Andy brings up Carl's lack of ambition. This I wasn't, there are some fair points that were made here. But at the same time, like I disagree with how this was handled. I think Carl got softballed here, and I don't think he should have been. I think everyone was coming to his defense, like, well, he makes money, he does branding deals just like you, Lindsay. And I think that was a fair point. I think that was a fair point. But he's not doing what he loves, and it's not, you can tell he's just doing stuff just to do stuff. And that's not really the route he wants to go. He wants to do something different. And he brings up that he actually has found the funding and is opening up like I guess a cafe bar that doesn't serve any alcohol. It's all non-alcoholic drinks. I wish him all the luck. I really hope it goes well. I will eat my words if it does well and it succeeds. And I would gladly eat my words. Because if that means that that's successful, then wonderful. I really, really would. This is where I would love to be proven wrong. I just don't see how that is a successful business venture. I don't. But just because I don't doesn't mean it won't be successful. But I was just like, oh man. But Lindsay made a fair point. She's like, you are talking about things that are going to cost us more money. She's like, we need money to come in. And clearly, like, she wants to get pregnant soon and have a family. And so, like, at some point, she's going to need to know that he can carry the household for a little bit of time. And I think that some of those points were never brought up. And I think they were valid enough to bring up in this reunion, and they never were. The cast defends Carl on this, like, just because he's not making the same amount as you. And it's just like, I think if it was a different woman, it would have been okay, but it's Lindsay. Lindsay, it's not going to fly with that, like, I just don't see. I'll be honest. I don't think I would want to be with a man who's making less money than me. And for the same reason that if I'm able to, like, become a mom and I'm going to be taking, I want to just know that we're secure, that we've got the bills paid, and that, like, we're okay. The last thing I want to be is being pregnant and worried about, like, are we going to be able to make ends meet, kind of thing. And and that's not to say that that's how the case for all people, but the one thing I will defend about Lindsay, and I don't defend a lot on her, in a sense of, like, she really does need to soften. As much as I gave Carl shit for, softer and tenderness, like, I need more softness and tenderness. Um, Lindsay is, um, yeah, she's the reason I say this is because the kind of man she wants is going to need her to soften her edges a little bit, like, a guy who's well in his masculine energy and is used to leading isn't going to take that shit. He isn't. And so I just think that, but at the same time, I know from my perspective, I need a guy who knows how to lead, can take the lead in the decisions, and is going to do all that. Like, I need a guy who's going to do that. And she's not getting that from him. And I just don't know why they didn't bring up some of the things of, like, how he just didn't know how to make decisions. Like, he just seemed to, like, waver. He always need to use her as a sounding board, and then got mad at her for being the sounding board. It was just like all of that, I think, should have been brought up, but it wasn't. Then we get to finally Carl visiting his mom and stepdad. And was this a setup? Was it not a setup? I'm on the fence about this. I can see how, he didn't produce this. And Andy makes a good point here. He's like, do you think Carl's that good of a producer that he was going to get? He's like, I got to call at this wedding, but I need my stepdad to say that he would never marry us. Like, I don't think that's what happened at all. But I do think that Carl handled this wrong, and that he should have been bringing these things up. He was just too scared. And as we see the way Lindsay handles herself, I don't blame him so much for being a little scared of her. I think we're all scared of Lindsay. I think there are very few people who would want to go into a fight with Lindsay, or into a very heated discussion that where she could pop off. But Lindsay felt like he was planting seeds. And Andy brings that all up about the whole, like, do you think he's that good of a producer? And Carl just said he didn't know how to navigate having this new information. He's like, I don't need, he was like, I wasn't sure. And that's why, like, he showed up to the bridal shower and he was all excited and happy. And, um, but then Andy brings up a good point here. He's like, Carl told you on the last weekend that he was having second thoughts about getting married. Like, maybe they weren't ready for that just yet. And so he goes, so how were you blindsided? And Lindsay again goes, well, then after that, he told me he was committed to making it work. And it's like, okay, look, if you're getting mixed messages, if you're getting like one thing from him and then another thing and it's flip flopping like that, and you're only a few months out from your actual wedding, any woman with half a brain cell would start to be like, okay, this isn't a good sign. Something might be down the road here. Like, the only reason I think she was truly blindsided, this is where I think the blind side holds water, is, and this is the only place I think it holds water, is when she was like, he knew me. He knew who I was this entire time. And again, I don't know why they didn't discuss this either. Like Carl, you knew who you were getting involved with. Like she's always been Lindsay. That's the one consistent thing you can say about the one thing you cannot take away from Lindsay is she's always been Lindsay. But when in this particular instance, like I the only way that she could have been she actually was blindsided was like, how are you not, you knew me, like you, and now you don't feel like I'm the right person for you, like that I can totally understand where she would feel blindsided. As into like, is this wedding going to get called off or not? No, like I just don't buy it. Like she can't. She has no leg to stand on there. Then Andy asks Carl if the cameras empowered him to pull the plug, basically. And he doesn't admit that. He just kind of skirts around it and says, look, the cameras have been there for the last 8 years. And so Lindsay again, still hanging on to this, like, I was blindsided. And Kyle like steps in. He's like, Carl was still undecided even when he met with me before he came to you. So here we find out Andy kind of comes in and steps in and actually says that, the producers knew that the weekend wasn't good between you two, knew that there was heat. Obviously, when they all left to go to wherever they were going, I think it was Montauk after that, like wherever they went after they all decided to go to that bar after Dockers, or I don't know where it was. Lindsay was like, well, I don't want to drive with Carl, and you could tell like there was tension as they left. So the producers all knew that. So I can understand why the producers may have like reached out to Carl. Um, Maybe even the producers are scared of Lindsay and chose Carl instead to ask him. I could totally see that one. But like I think that I can't say that that's not far-fetched. That's believable to me. I can believe that the producers would reach out to Carl and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Well, it's not great. Like, we this, like, we haven't spoken in 3 days." Or I could see how like the producer like, "Well, maybe we should pick cameras back up." That's a possibility. But I also wonder, did Carl like want cameras there? I think both things can be true. I think maybe that is what happened, but I also think maybe Carl took that as an opportunity to maybe have cameras there when he has this conversation with her, knowing that if it did go south, he's got it all on camera. Like I don't know. There was too much gaslighting of Lindsay at the end for me to be able to say definitively one way or the other, because had we not seen all that gaslighting, I would have been a lot more on Carl's side of all of this. But we saw like just the both of them had deplorable behavior towards each other. They were both manipulative. They both gaslight each other. The things that they say to each other are just like, God forbid, like this is a good example of, if you are experiencing this in your relationship before you are about to get married, abort mission, abort, get off the ship, like just cancel everything, like save your money because it's going to cost you a lot more money down the road in a divorce. So Andy makes that whole disclaimer and verifies that the producers did not know that the wedding would be called off. They just wanted to follow up on a bad weekend. And Lindsay claims, well, it looked like he was planning it all summer. And Kyle and Amanda jump to Carl's defense in here, and they're saying no, like, and everyone basically says here, they're like, we thought you would be the one to call it off and be like, you know what? Screw this. Screw your back and forth. You don't know what you're doing. I'm calling it off, which honestly, I feel like that's what Carl wanted. I do feel like he was trying to push her in that way, whether it was subconscious or consciously. That I think was what he was actually like trying to do. so that he wouldn't have to carry that on his back because it just looks like he has a hard time carrying the weight of heavy decisions. And that's Carl, you got to grow up. You got to grow up. You're a man now. Then we see Kyle like just wishing that Lindsay would have had more self-awareness today than what she had. And I would agree with him. I think Lindsay was lacking self-awareness. I think she was right in certain things, but I think she was also lacking self-awareness where she needed to have self-awareness. They officially are moved out today. Well, I should say Lindsay's renewed her lease starting tomorrow, which because today's June 14th as I record this and I'm going to release it. And so we can officially say Carl is now off the hook. He is no longer paying rent or on the lease with Lindsay. So they are officially donezo. We know that Lindsay is, she has a new boyfriend who hasn't seen the show. And Andy's response was, "Oh boy." I would say the same. I think I think Lindsay's father said the exact same thing. I think he said, "Oh boy," when she said Carl just called off the wedding. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to say. I think the guy I would say don't watch the show, but be ready. Be ready for what's down the road. Maybe he can handle her. Listen, there's always someone for someone in this world. Okay. Carl's actually happy for her. And then Andy asks Lindsay if Andy's question was, do you feel like Carl did you a favor by calling off the wedding, by making this decision? And she says, I do admit that the decision Carl made was the best decision for her. I just don't agree with the way it was handled. So then Carl's like, wow, I'm like really impressed. I didn't think you were going to say that. Like, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting you to say, like, I actually did you a favor. She's like, I didn't say you did me a favor. And it's like, oh God, Lindsay. It's like you can't like it's like a dog with a bone, like you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get it. And Andy does ask Carl, like, do you miss Lindsay? Because Lindsay does admit, like, in the beginning I missed him, but now no, I don't. I have nothing for him. It was dissolved really quickly. She's very like dismissive of it all. And then Carl admits I do miss her and I haven't been with anyone new. And I know that's embarrassing. And everyone's like, no, it's not embarrassing. I'm like, Carl, like clearly this guy has a really low self-worth. And I don't know, like he's trying to live up to some image. And I think when we go back into past seasons and we look at him and how he was drinking, he always came across as a very different Carl. Like he was presenting himself as a guy who was super confident. I got this, I got that. He's like sleeping with all these women. He's like working in finance, doing all this stuff. And at the end of it all, of course, I mean, obviously, those of us who've done the healing journey, we are well aware of what that means. That that's just a show, it's a front, which it was. But really, it makes me sad to see how low his self-worth is. And I also am sad for how the internet behaves in the comments section. I think like it's okay to have an opinion, but you don't have to go in on people so hard and like just tear them down to pieces. I don't know. And as predicted, West has been also taking the heat. And when I don't think I don't think he deserves the level of heat that he's getting. I think that yeah, at the end of the day, he's a fuck boy. He's a funny guy. He's funny to be friends with. He's certainly not anyone you be in want to be have your girlfriend in or be in a relationship with. At least not right now in the stage of his life that he's at. But from someone who enjoys watching the show, okay, just as a viewer, I like West on the show. I think he brings a really good dynamic to the house. He brings lightheartedness, which this house totally needed. Jesse does the same. The reason why Jesse is now like gotten off scot-free from a lot of this is because Jesse at least showed who he was. Wes hid it. And that's where it's like, just dude, be authentic, be you. Just let people decide for themselves. They're going to like you. They're not going to like you. It doesn't matter. Like that's one of the things that I will, and that's why I'm even doing these recaps. Like, like some people might be like, wow, Nicole, she watches reality TV. Like, that's not very spiritual of her. It's like, well, fuck, I don't care. Like I'm not living my life for other people. Like this is just part of my personality. I grew up watching reality, MTV, Road Rules, Survivor, like all that stuff. I like was just enthralled by it. I was like, this is so cool. And what I like about it, at least in the initial stages, is that it's not so overproduced. You get to see all these things, and it's just not someone wanting to, well, I can't say it's not someone wanting to be famous because a lot of these people are, but it's like, I don't know. There's something about it that I find is so intriguing to watch as a social experiment, and just like, oh, looking at the different relationship dynamics. Like I actually am, I'm not just entertained. I feel like I'm learning. I'm like, okay, this is where like people are at. And like, ooh, this is like what not to do, what to do. Like, ooh, I can look out for this in other people. Like if I see this in other people, like I know like that this is what's going on. Like it's kind of like, I don't know, it's great relationship school teachings in a sense of giving us the real life visuals of what's kind of going on. I don't know. It's just kind of how I look at it. But that's where we're going to leave it right now for the recap. I don't know what I'm going to recap next week because I don't even know what to recap, guys. Like, is there anything you guys want me to recap? Because I can't recap Real Housewives of New Jersey. I just can't. I mean, I watched the show, but it's boring. It's too toxic. I sometimes I tune out of it when I'm watching it. Like I'd rather, I don't know, like there's just something about it that I just don't, I don't know if I'd bring any value to this show for you guys, from that show. And so I'm trying to think of like, if there's something that would bring you guys value, let me know. Can you guys just reach out to me, guys? Either it's in the comments, DM me if you want to keep yourself anonymous, like it's okay. Whatever it is, just let me know. I will watch it. I will recap it. Because there's Below Deck, there's Real Housewives of Dubai, which actually I kind of think is interesting. Just because I've been to Dubai. And so I think that's kind of cool. And one of the, I love Ian. I love Ian on that show. Like, just love her so much. Like, would love to just be friends with her. I just love her personality. But anyways, I'm gonna leave it there, guys. Again, 28 days to the life, 28 days to the life that you love. Program starts on June 20th. Prices are going up tomorrow, June 15th. So if you would like to get in on the early bird price, I'm leaving the link in the description below. If you want to come to my retreat and have a massively transformative experience, I was just on my live call-in show yesterday. One of the girls who was at the retreat called in, and she's been a client of mine for a little while. And we've been always working on like healing the back of her scalp. A couple of sessions that we had were like, how do we heal that? And I'm so happy that from the retreat, she finally got a breakthrough on that and got some major progress in that healing. So, there's just so many, I'm just amazed at like the big transformations that come out of these retreats. So if you're looking for something that like really get like a jump start, like take a quantum leap in your healing journey, in changing your life, any of that, I highly suggest considering coming to the retreat, September 18th through the 21st, here in Breckenridge, Colorado. I'm going to leave links for that, to get your ticket as well, in the description below. Guys, I love you so much. Full moon in Capricorn, rundown with Mary Ducina on Tuesday, so don't miss it. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.